There, this is Nick at Riggin Farm. I have not posted a video in a very long time, with the exception of a few shorts. I've been very busy on the farm. My wife Ashley and I have both been super busy working on lots of projects. We actually both quit our part-time jobs earlier this year to focus 100% of our time and energy on the farm. We've been attending 2 farmers markets every week. And we've been spending a lot of time the day before each market prepping for those markets. We've been making a lot of changes in how we're doing things. We have adopted very much a regenerative and sustainable agricultural viewpoint with everything we do. We have posted a lot of videos in the past of how we were starting our farm and using a lot of conventional methods because we didn't really know much about farming prior to starting the farm. We saw lots of videos with people tilling, so we tried tilling and that did not work out very well. To make a long story short, a lot of research and failures on our part have led us to believe that we need to focus more on soil health. And once we have a nice, healthy garden soil bed, then we can start actually producing the produce and the flowers that we intended to produce from the very beginning. And so far, that's been going much better. We've had a lot more successful harvests with these new approaches. Something else that we've been working on a lot over the last several weeks is fencing. We have this back portion of our property is about 15 acres total, and we are working on fencing in about 10 acres of that so that we can get some cattle. We actually are probably going to get a cow-calf pair in a couple months, which is a little bit sooner than we wanted, but the opportunity came up with a friend of ours who needs to get rid of one of her many cows, and she had a calf not too long ago, and so she's going to be selling us those animals. So we have our goats and our sheep still. We're going to be using them to work on establishing this pasture. We have lots of growth like this in the pasture area. We have lots of wild blackberries like this and just weeds of all sorts. Over on this side, we have actually planted a lot of grass seed. It's just kind of overgrown with weeds at the moment because our sheep and goats have not been back here recently. It's kind of torn up a little bit because we have been using our tractor, and our neighbor has been helping us with some skid steer work to help clear a fence path. So as you can see, we have been working on installing this 4-foot woven wire fencing that's rated for sheep and goats. It'll work great for cattle as well, but goats and sheep are much trickier to contain. So this is the kind of minimum standard for what you need to have them. Also, once we have the all the fencing installed, we'll start running some barbed wire along the top of this. So there'll be about a 4 to 8 inch gap above this woven wire, and then it'll have some barbed wire. So this is the start of the fencing right here. This is our gate, or will be a gate. We have some gates. You can see one of them right there. We have purchased so far. We've purchased so far 4 of these 8-foot gates. Oh, nice! I've actually gotten some views. Great. So which country? We're in the USA. We are in North Georgia, and yeah. So we're gonna be putting 2 8-foot gates right here at the entrance of our pasture. So we've got 1 H brace right here that has been tensioned. So this is nice and tight. Actually, I probably need to come back and tighten it now that I say that it is nice and tight. But we're going to be putting in 2 8-foot gates, so we'll have a 16-foot entrance right here at the beginning of our pasture. And we have started running this 48-inch woven wire, and it goes about 260 feet to this first corner right here. Let's see. Got some more things. Let's see. What did I miss by 8 inches? Oh, So the 8 inches is that we are going to be putting in some barbed wire about 4 to 8 inches above this woven wire. That'll help keep the animals contained and also keep some predators out if they decide to come through. So I'm going to go ahead and walk this fence line so you can kind of see what we've been doing so far. So all of these T-posts have been driven in by hand. And then we have wooden posts. So we have about 3 T-posts for every 1 wooden line post. So these are a 3-inch treated posts. They're 6.5 feet tall, just like the T-posts were, that are driven about 20 inches into the ground. And they were, actually I'll go ahead and flip this around so you can see a little bit better. So we actually use an auger to drill a hole into the soil and then line the post up and then backfill a few inches at a time and tamp it down to make sure that it's nice and tight. It was actually not as tight as I would like. We can always come back and tamp it down a little bit more. We do not have horses. Currently we have goats and sheep, and we're going to be getting cattle in a couple months. We'll be getting a cow-calf pair in a few months, and then next fall we plan on bringing in another 2 cow-calf pairs once our pasture is a little bit more established. So as you can see, the wooden posts, we have attached the woven wire just with some barbed staples. And let me walk a little bit further to show you the T-posts. So the T-post, we have these little metal wire clips that prevent the fence from moving too much. So when installing the fence, you want to make sure that you have the fence on the inside of the posts, because if the animals decide to push on the fence, you're not going to have to worry about them getting out. Whereas if you push on the other side, it's a little more likely to get busted off the clips. You want it to be pushing up against those braces. So I'm going to go ahead and walk over to the first corner brace that we installed. So this fence is not electric. We do have electric fence for our pigs, which I can show you later on if we still have a lot of visitors or viewers on the video. Let's see. Could goats chew through the wire? No, goats will not chew through. This is actually a sheep and goat wire. It's made very specifically by them. The USDA actually recommended this specific wire to be able to contain sheep and goats. So I'm going to show you this first corner brace here. So we have some 5-inch diameter vertical posts and some horizontal posts as well. Basically, this center post was driven 3 feet into the ground. So we used an auger to drill a 3-foot deep hole and then put the vertical wooden post in and tamped it back down. You can see that it's cracked a little bit because it's been so dry lately. After the vertical posts are put in, then the center one we put in nice and snug, backfilled all the way. Then this other vertical post right here, we didn't pack it down all the way, but what we ended up doing is, in order to hold this horizontal brace post in, we drilled a hole about halfway through this wooden post and then several inches into this wooden post right here. And then there's a 3/8-inch steel brace pin holding that in place. And then we use ratchet straps to actually hold these 2 vertical posts together and made sure that this was relatively horizontal, and then drilled another hole about 9 inches deep and put this 10-inch steel brace pin in. So once that was in, the vertical posts are holding the horizontal posts, and then we went back with some 10-gauge steel wire and did 2 loops around, kind of in a figure-8 pattern, and then use these tensioners to get them nice and tight. There's actually a tool that we use to tighten them up. So in essence, with this steel wire, what it's doing is it's pulling from this bottom corner up to this top corner here on the opposite side, and it's pulling it tight this way so that the structure is very stable and doesn't move. That way, when there's any kind of tension being pulled on this fencing right here, like, I mean, I can't move this at all. It is super, super sturdy stuff. And the fence posts are about 16 feet apart, which is the maximum that the USDA recommends for having the spacing of your line posts. But I can push on this with my whole body and it just kind of pushes me right back. Hopefully there's going to be enough to eat for the sheep and goats when we put them in here, that they're not going to have any reason to escape. If you look at the bottom, you may have noticed that there was a gap underneath. We are allowed to have a maximum of 6-inch gap from the ground to the bottom of the fence, which is good because our terrain here in North Georgia is mountainous. We have lots of hills. It may not look like it, but from where I'm standing up to the top of the hill, it's actually about a 75-foot difference in altitude. So it's pretty awesome that we're able to still get this fencing done despite having a really hilly terrain like most farmland you see on movies and videos. Oh, Greg, your dad's friend from Indiana. Hey, Greg, how's it going? Yeah, living the dream. You know, sometimes it's more of a nightmare for sure. It's a lot of hard work, and unfortunately, there's a lot of not just work but money up front that you need to put in to start building something like this. We're definitely not independently wealthy. We don't have any investors. We've been using our life savings, a little bit of credit card debt, and some loans to actually make this thing happen. So don't necessarily recommend doing it that way, but I really wanted to have the freedom of having my own farm, being my own boss, and we are making money off the land. At the end of the year, in the beginning of 2025, I'll actually be making a video that tells you exactly how much we made on the farm this year. This is the first year that we have been focusing full time on the farm. We both were working part time at the beginning of the year, and then once the market season started in April, we actually quit our part-time jobs to focus 100% of our energy on this farm. So as you can see, this is not ideal pasture. It's perfect for sheep and goats, which we have. We have a couple of goats. We're actually getting 3 more for free. Our friend that is selling us a cow-calf pair soon, she has 3 goats that she's just giving away because she doesn't have a need for them anymore. But they will help clear all of this just brush, the weeds and the blackberries and even some of the pine saplings and poplar saplings we have. They will actually eat them down all the way to the ground and leave room for the grass. I will show you that there actually is grass growing underneath all this brush. There's some native grass, and we did come back through and plant a bunch of seed as well, which when I get to the top of the hill, you'll get to see a little bit more of that. But I'll show you kind of this path. So my neighbor has a really awesome 95 horsepower skid steer that he used to clear our fence line so that we could get this fence going. So this, from the bottom of the hill up to this first H brace that we'll be approaching soon, is a little over 300 feet. This roll of fencing is 330 feet, and then you need about 5 feet or so to be able to wrap around the post so that it is nice and tight. And then you need to take it up to the other end. We're using an attachment that we use on the tractor that helps us unspool the fence, and then we clamp it down once we get to the end and pull it really tight up against that fence post, and then we're able to staple it in, cut the wire, and then wrap it around the post. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. And this is actually the last bit of fencing we've done. So we've only put in about 600 feet of this woven wire so far. So anytime you end a roll of the fencing, you have to terminate on an H brace. So that's what this is. It's an H brace because it kind of looks like an H because it's got 2 vertical and a horizontal posts there. You can see all of our little wire trimmings that need to come clean up before we let the animals on. And we've got another one of these tensioners here. which is still holding pretty tight. So again, what that's doing is it's grabbing the bottom of this post here and the top of this, pulling it nice and tight. This brace is not going anywhere. It is super sturdy. We've already installed the line posts going up to this next brace up here. It's a little bit more than a corner brace. It's a little bit more of a complicated brace. And I'll explain why in just a moment. So as you can see, we've already put in all of the tensioning wire. So that fence line is going to come from that H brace. It's going to wrap around here. It's going to be on the back side of this, and then go along all these vertical posts here up to that next corner brace. You can see after that way. And we have this other brace coming off of it because we're actually going to be installing fence line right here so that we can close in and segregate about 1.5 acres from the overall 9.5 acres that we'll be fencing in. So we're going to be putting in a gate here at the top of the hill. So whenever you do a gate, you need to have an H brace on either side. So we've got an 8-foot H brace there, 8-foot H brace there, and as you can see, the 8-foot gate will go in the middle. So we are not going to install that until we actually have the woven wire attached, which will go on the front side of this. So the goal, next step, is going to be going from that last H brace where the fence terminated and wrap all the way around that corner brace, come along the front side of these T-posts and wooden line post down to that H brace, or that corner brace. It'll terminate at the center brace of that corner. And with the leftover from that 330-foot roll, we'll be able to go from that side all the way to this H brace at the one side of the gate. And then we are still waiting on my neighbor to come back with a skid steer to cut a nice path for the fence line down the hill to then go back all the way to the start where the 16-foot gate entrance is. We'll actually have an 8-foot gate on this side as well, so that this 1.5 acre paddock will be separated from the other 8 acres that we're going to be fencing in. As you can see, we have a lot of growth, but with that said, there is a lot of grass mixed in there. We have several different species of grass in addition to all the weeds. But this is going to be all really good nutritious stuff for our sheep and goats. And once they mow that down, we'll be able to overseed with some fescue and alfalfa, some clover, some orchard grass, and a few other really nutritious things. And that will be perfect for our small cattle operation that we'll be starting. Let's take a look at the comments, see what people are having to say. Let's see. Yep. City is the pits. Yep. I agree. Awesome fence. Future parts are exciting. How will this develop as you build your final home? Okay, great question. So this is actually a really good friend of mine, Tarvis Wingspoon in the comments. He is my best friend in the whole world. We've known each other for close to 30 years, since we were little kids. So he knows a lot more about me than probably anybody watching this video. So I'm going to walk over to our future home site. So we do plan on building a home once the kids are grown and it's just me and my wife Ashley, and we have the funds to do so. We plan on putting a home about right here where I'm standing, and I will flip the camera around and show you the view and tell you why we decided to pick this as our final home site. So we've got some trees and saplings here. If you were to go straight through that, you'd go back down the hill towards the home we're in now. And then we've got this view all around us. So we are in the foothill of the Smoky Mountains, the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Georgia. So this is a pretty awesome view. We do have a road, probably about a half mile beyond those trees down there. It's not a super busy road, but it is a road traveled. You probably can't hear it through the microphone. And right now it's pretty quiet. There are some times when it gets pretty loud. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and walk back down towards the back of the fencing project. So flip the camera around again. Sorry for the back and forth. So this is a corner brace. So the last corner brace, the fencing, the woven wire fencing is going to be around the outside of that corner brace, but it's still going to be on the front side of all of these T-posts and the wooden posts, so that the animals, when pushing on the fence, it'll be stopped by the posts right here rather than the other way around. And on this side, it's going to be going around the post, but this part will be where the animals are. So when they're pushing on the fence along here, we don't have to worry about them pushing anything out of the way. So this is going to be from this corner, or the center post of the corner brace, all the way down this hill is going to be pushing probably right at 320 feet. So we're going to have very little margin of error when stretching the fence. We're going to have to make sure it's really tight when we secure it to the first end, and with very little wiggle room. And then we're going to have to go, well, actually, I guess technically we're going to start on the bottom corner and then drive the tractor up the hill. But we'll have to make sure that we have a very, what's the word? I'm kind of winded, sorry. Walking up and down this hill is definitely helping me get into shape, but I'm still not in great shape. Yeah, we just have very little margin for error because, as I mentioned, it's the rolls of fencing are 330 feet, and this path is about 320, so that only gives us about 5 feet on either side to be able to wrap around and secure it to these vertical corner posts. So as you can see, this twine that we've been using, that's what we've been using to make sure that all of the posts are in a straight line. When hammering in the T-posts and then drilling with the auger and packing in the wooden posts, we need to make sure they're all in a straight line. I worked kind of wait for my phone to, cool off a bit. So I apologize about that. I'm not sure exactly at what point it started to overheat and it stopped the live stream, but I'm going to kind of hang out here in the shade for just a moment to allow my phone to continue to cool down a little bit more. But basically, I'm going to go ahead and flip the camera around and show you where we are with the fencing. So we have this twine here that we were using as a sight in order to get the fence line perfectly straight, so that when we put in our woven wire down here at this corner, we can go all the way up the hill and connect it to that corner brace up there, and the fence will be in a perfectly straight line. So we have, as you can see, this H brace started here, which will turn into a corner brace. We'll go that way, and it's going to be very, very windy, to say the least, which really stinks when building a fence. Because anytime you have more than a 20-degree angle change, you need to install a corner brace. And anytime you have a significant change in elevation or slope, you also need to put in an H brace. So as you can see, or maybe you can't see from the video too well, but there's lots of up and down with this. So we're going to have to put in a corner brace right there, coming off that corner brace at the very back corner of the thing. And then we're going to have to come down here and probably put in an H brace about here because of the change in slope. And we'll be able to go straight this way and probably have to put in another H brace. So this back part of the property is wooded, which is really nice. I'm actually appreciating it a lot right now because I'm in the shade. I just mentioned a moment ago that it is 95 degrees out right now. So this shade is very welcome. So we've got a pretty hard corner right here. We'll have to put in a corner brace. And then we'll be able to probably start it about right here, kind of at the edge of this clearing here. And then we'll be able to go in a straight line up this hill. So the total estimated linear feet for this fencing project is 3,700 feet. And that'll give us about 9.5 acres total. Part of that 3,700 feet of fencing does include our 1.5 acre paddock within the 9.5 acres. So we'll have basically 8 acres and an acre and a half. And that'll be good because that acre and a half, we're actually going to put our goats and sheep in there initially while we're working on the rest of this. And they'll be able to munch on that acre and a half of growth, get all the weeds and everything down so that the native grasses and the grasses that we planted by seed, give them a chance to thrive. All right, so we're up a hill. May not have looked like it in video, but this is a pretty steep hill. I'm gonna put the phone kind of parallel to the horizon. So that's the slope. Pretty significant slope. Again, when you're walking, you feel a lot more than you can see from the camera. So I'll have to put in a quarter brace here, make this turn. Probably have to put in an H brace, this little dip here, before putting in a corner brace right here. Going this way, another corner brace. This is why building fences in the woods is not recommended, but living in North Georgia, we have lots of woods, very little flat land, so we're working with what we have. It's a pretty big pine that we had to take out in order to make room for this fence path. Got a bit of a straight path here. Might have to put in another H brace going this way before we hit the bottom of the hill. We might not have to, we might be able to get away with it. It's a gentle of enough slope. As long as we put in enough line posts, we should be able to get away with it without putting in that H brace. So put in a corner there. And then we got a gentle slope going up this way. Probably have to put a corner or an H brace right here as it starts to slope back down. As you can see, our neighbor did a great job with the skid steer, cutting a relatively smooth path for us to work with. I've been paying him $100 an hour for the work. That's for his time, the use of his equipment, and fuel. Every H brace we install costs us over $100 in materials and over an hour in labor. So in my opinion, paying him to do the work is well worth it, because even if he's only able to knock out the need for 2 corner braces or H braces in an hour, it's more than paid for itself. So coming up to another corner here. It's another corner brace. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this video and count how many corner braces and H braces I'm estimating that we're gonna have to use. That way I can inventory all of our fencing material that we have and know what we have to put an order in for if we're short. All right, so corner there. This area is gonna get smoothed out a little bit more. So it's hard to estimate for sure how many braces we're gonna need. But after that corner brace and we get up to this hill, we are gonna have to put in another H brace, because then we're gonna go back downhill and we're coming to another corner. So these woods here, beyond those woods, there's a little creek. Beyond that creek is where we have our pigs in the woods. So we can walk by that area in just a moment. All right, we've got a corner here. And I'm hoping that he can level this out a little bit more to eliminate the need for a brace, because the slope is pretty consistent, but it has this dip. It's probably close to 15 feet. and that's not going to really work that well without putting in extra braces. I mean, we could put in a couple extra T-posts, which are like $6 a piece, and just a couple minutes of pounding, depending on how hard the ground is. So we might be able to get away with just putting in a few extra T-posts rather than an H-brace. And then this area, as you can see, has been cleared pretty well. So that corner, like I said, it slopes down a little bit and comes back up. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to put an H-brace in there. I don't think T-posts are gonna cut it. And then it's relatively straight shot from here. And then we're gonna have to put in another H-brace, as you can see, to go downhill. Now the thing with H-braces is they're necessary for when you have a change in slope like this, but they're also necessary when you have a when you need to terminate the fence. So you can only go 320-ish, 310, 320 feet without starting a new roll of fence, and it has to start on an H-brace. So we may be right around that point anyway, so putting in that H-brace won't be that big of a deal. And then this area is a little rough, where I have a pretty big incline right here again. So this is I have the camera on the ground, and it is parallel with sea level, so it's a pretty big slope, but it's not for very long. We'll have to put in probably a corner brace there, and another corner brace up here at the top, and then we can go in a straight line through this, which also needs a little bit of cleaning up. So we're going to try to get as close to this tree line as possible, because that will maximize our total acreage of our pasture. As you can see here, we have lots of saplings that have grown over the last couple of years, just from pine cones and other things that have dropped and decided to plant themselves. And nature does not like bare ground, so if there is bare dirt, she will find a way to cover it up, and trees are a really good way of doing that. So getting this cleared out for the fence line is great, but we are going to have to work relatively quickly before things start growing back. They'll grow back once the fence is up, but that's fine. The goats will do a really good job of keeping the fence line on the inside clear, and because we are keeping that woven wire about 3 to 6 inches above the ground, they'll be able to stick their faces down there and eat a little bit on the other side, which will be really helpful because that will prevent the need for me to come in with a weed eater. All right, and then we're back to the start. So this fence line will go all the way up here, where this H-brace on the one side of the gate will actually become a corner brace. And here we are back at the very beginning. So for anybody who's just joining us, I just did a tour of the pasture fencing project we're working on. Currently fencing in about 9.5 acres of pasture with a 1.5 acre partition that will go from this corner up the hill to the right, back down the hill, ending at that corner there, right at 1.5 acres. We're going to be putting 6 sheep, 2 goats in there once this area is done. Hopefully in about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks from now, we'll have this area finished up. I am getting help from a friend, really good friend of mine. My friend Travis that I mentioned earlier, it's actually his brother. So I've known him pretty much the exact same amount of time, almost 30 years. So he has offered to help get this fencing done. He has a little bit more experience fencing than I do. So, and he also has some really cool tools for the tractor, like the auger. So I'll walk over and show you the auger right now. It's pretty cool. So this attaches to the front of my tractor and has 2 hydraulic hoses. So we're able to drill the 3-foot deep holes necessary for all of these brace posts. This is a 12-inch diameter auger, and it goes down a little bit more than 3 feet, but it's definitely a very helpful tool when it comes to digging post holes, because using post hole diggers by hand in North Georgia, where there are lots of rocks, actually Pickens County, Georgia, where I am now, it's the marble capital of the state. More marble has been found in this county than pretty much anywhere in the US. The Lincoln Memorial is actually made from marble found in this county. So digging that by hand with post hole diggers is not great. The auger is able to chip away at the stone slowly but surely, so we have been able to get any hole that we need to dig dug. So that's pretty awesome. Also, the fence tensioner that goes on the back of the tractor is my friend's as well, and he has been gracious enough to bring that here so that we can use that to make sure that this woven wire fencing gets nice and tight when we pull it from one brace to the other. I'm going to go ahead and walk towards the pig area. That's another project that I need to finish up soon. Need to finish running some electrical wire to open up another section for them, because they currently are in about a half-acre section, and they have another 1.5 acres that I need to open up for them so that they can continue to forage and get all the good stuff that they love to get at in the woods. So they've been a challenge. They're our first livestock other than chickens to get on the farm. So there's been a little bit of a learning curve with them. I like the system we have now much better than what we initially started with. I'm going to flip this around. So this is a 6-foot gate that I've installed. Not necessarily too standard, but it is been super helpful because I'm able to back up my livestock trailer right here, open up this gate, and throw a couple bags of feed into the back of the trailer. The pigs just jump right in. I can close them up, and they're ready to go to the butcher. So as I mentioned earlier, it is 95 degrees. So the pigs are enjoying the shade and these mud pits that they've created. Got a 275-gallon waterer right there. And I've ratchet strapped it to a tree because they like to push it over and dump all their water out and make a big mess because they're pigs. They're absolutely loving this mud with the heat we have right now. So this big pig right there, that is Morcia. She is actually one of the first pigs we got. Her 3 brothers went to the butcher, but she and her sister have been our 2 breeding sows here on Riggin farm. And they've had a few litters each, and these babies are theirs. So they got a big baby. That's the one of her sister's babies right there. Her sister's name is Guanciale. And then these pigs here are her babies. We've got some more pigs down here enjoying this muddy pit. So yeah, these 3 medium-sized pigs here actually go into the butcher in about 2 weeks. Actually less than 2 weeks. And then those other pigs, they will be going to the butcher in February. So our pasture-raised heritage pork is our #1 product for profit right now on the farm. It does cost a lot of money to feed them because in addition to what they're foraging, they do need more, especially with the scale that we're raising them, because currently we have just shy of 30 pigs. We had over 30, almost 40 at one point, but we have been taking pigs to the butcher the last several months. So we are feeding them a non-GMO, corn-free and soy-free feed that we get locally. And it is primarily wheat, rice, and alfalfa, and then also has lots of essential oils and some yeasts that are really good for probiotic health and vitamins and minerals. So it's a really good quality feed that we've been feeding our pigs. Majority of pigs that you find that end up in the grocery store, or even the way most small farmers raise pigs, is they feed them primarily corn and soy. They are both very cheap. They are nutrient rich as far as macronutrients. They have lots of protein and fat, which will make animals get big really quickly for very little money. Now, the problem with feeding your animals corn and soy is that both corn and soy, as well as canola and a lot of other seed oils, are very high in omega-6 fatty acids. Now, almost everybody's heard of omega-3 fatty acids, which can be found primarily in wild seafood. You hear salmon and sardines and mackerel and other fatty wild fish being high in omega-3s. A lot of people take an omega-3 supplement because of how good it is. Children's vitamins, prenatal vitamins, oftentimes have omega-3s in them because they're crucial for brain development and brain health. Omega-6s are also essential. You do need to have some omega-6s in your diet. And what's really crucial is having the right ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. You really want a 1-to-1 ratio. So if it's recommended based on your age and gender to have 1,400 milligrams daily of omega-3s, you should shoot for about 1,400 milligrams of omega-6s as well. Now, they say that it's safe to have a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 parts omega-6 to 1 part of omega-3. That isn't acceptable, but it's the high end of what's considered acceptable. Now, what happens when you go beyond that is it can lead to a lot of problems, because just like anything, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. Too much omega-6 in your diet leads to cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disorders. The way your body can store fat and utilize fat as energy compromises that. So you end up, a lot of people can become obese when they have a very high ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. And also some studies suggest cancer, or certain types of cancer. So when you have too much omega-6 in your diet, then you end up with all of these horrible things that are like basically the top 5 killers in the US. Now, why is it that those are the top 5 killers in the US? Well, the average American diet consists of an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 24-to-1. That's the average. There are a lot of people that don't eat those things, and there are people that eat a lot of those things. So what are those found in? They're found in processed foods. All the fast food chains are using things that are really high in omega-6s. And a lot of vegetarians that are eating a lot of soy products, actually, they think they're being healthy, and they're actually throwing off the balance and the homeostasis in their bodies and causing these horrible problems. So, but what about the carnivores? Well, like I mentioned, the majority of livestock is fed corn and soy to fatten them up because it is a cheap protein source. And you know the saying, you are what you eat? Well, you are what they ate as well. So when you're eating meat, whether it's chicken, beef, pork, or even a lot of farm-raised fish is fed a diet high in soy and corn, well, those omega-6s are being deposited into their fat cells. So when you eat that strip of bacon from a conventionally raised pig fed corn and soy its whole life, that strip of bacon has very high concentration of omega-6s. Whereas our pigs, who are never fed corn or soy or any GMOs whatsoever, have an extremely high omega-3 content because of the diet they have, in addition to all the forage that they get and the produce scraps and other things that we feed them on a regular basis. So you're actually getting some of the same benefits that you would get from wild salmon when you're eating our bacon. As a matter of fact, If you were to eat a 4-ounce portion of wild king salmon or a 4-ounce portion of our pig's pork belly, you'd actually get more omega-3s in that pork belly than you would that wild salmon, believe it or not. There's more overall fat, which is why there's more omega-3s, but more omega-3s nonetheless. And when we get cattle, we are going to do a grass-fed operation, but we will supplement with some of the same feed that does contain wheat and rice, but alfalfa. And this is only going to be in the beginning because, as you can see, this is not the best quality pasture that we can provide for animals, which is why we're going to be supplementing with some quality feed so that they are being healthy, they're putting on the right amount of weight. And once we have been able to mow down this growth and put in some quality pasture with some alfalfa, clover, timothy grass, orchard grass, all of those really high protein, high fat grasses that are really good for not just the animals, but also for the soil health and just the entire ecology. We'll be able to switch from grain, doing a small amount of grain. I'm talking like 1 to 3% of their total feed will come from grain at the very beginning. So it's not like this is not going to be a feedlot. They are going to be on grass with a bit of supplemental grain, especially for the lactating mamas. But again, no soy or corn is going into their feed when they are nursing their calves. Let's see. Awesome. Loving the comments. So this is definitely a project, this fencing that I've been talking about for the last 40 minutes. So we're going to have an 1.5 acres fenced in where the animals will go initially once that's done, while we continue to work on the other 8 acres of fencing. Once that is done, we'll actually next year start working on cross fencing. So we'll be creating more of these paddocks, probably about 1 acre to 1.5 acres, hopefully smaller. The goal is to actually break it down even smaller. We're going to have 22 1/3 acre paddocks, which will give us just a little over 7 acres of pasture with another 2 acres outside of the normal rotation. Our animals are going to stay in 1/3 of an acre for 2 days, and then they'll get moved to the next section. And they'll stay there for 2 days, and they'll get moved to the next section. And by the time they get back to that first 1/3 acre paddock that they were on, there'll be a 42-day rest period where nothing has been on that grass. The manure that has been deposited will fertilize. Any growth that had been eaten down by the animals will regrow even healthier and stronger. And then they'll start the process over again. Now, that 2 acres that is not going to be fenced in will be for things like access roads to be able to get from one end to the other without going through the pasture, because we don't want to drive on the pasture once we get it established, because the only trampling we want is the cows or the steer trampling the grass and helping push that manure into the soil to better fertilize it. We don't want to put our tractors or vehicles or anything on that, because it'll just lead to more compaction, which can lead to poor soil health. And soil health is the #1 priority on this farm, whether not just for the gardens, but for the animals as well. Soil health is the key to a healthy, sustainable, regenerative farm. So that 2 acres we're going to have outside of the pasture will be for roads. Also, our future home site, when we build our forever home, it'll be part of that. We would like to put in a pond. Originally, we were thinking a full acre would be great, but I think that over the last several months, as we've been diving more into the planning of the future of this farm, that I think a 1/2 acre would be great. We'd like to be able to stock it. I like fishing. It'd be nice to have our own private pond where we can fish and just have an additional water source, because having water on the property is not a bad thing. And also, if there's a drought, then if we continue to move the cattle from pasture to pasture, paddock to paddock, they're going to eat down the forage, and without rain, it won't grow back. So if we have a drought that lasts more than 42 days, we'll be able to move them into that 2-acre overflow where they can eat all of the stuff that's been growing elsewhere. And then once we get some rain and the pasture starts to recover, we'll be able to start them back in the paddock where they would have gone next and continue moving them from paddock to paddock and doing that 2-day stay with the 22 paddocks. Doing this while maintaining a relatively, I say relatively low head count, but I mean relatively low head count for a farm that raises beef cattle, will give us just enough. We'll have just enough feed to feed probably 6 sheep and 8 cattle at any given time. So we'll be able to produce a small amount of lamb and a small amount of beef without overgrazing. And in fact, we may have the potential to have extra forage. And if done properly, we won't have to feed hay in the winter because we'll have standing hay because of all of the growth that they don't eat while on those pastures in that 2-acre area. But I'm going to let you go. I've been on this for over 50 minutes now. I probably need to get started on some dinner for the kids and get on with our evening. But I do plan on making more full-length videos once the market season slows down, and also after the market season, so the beginning of 2025. I have a lot of really great content to share with you. I have a little more time to work on that, and I want to share all of the successes as well as the failures that we've had this year. And whether it's just for your entertainment or if you're interested in doing something similar, starting a small homestead or farm, we want you to be able to not make the same mistakes we did and do things right from the very beginning, because it's cost us a lot of time and money, and it's valuable time that I can never get back. The money can come and go, but time is one thing, most precious commodity that you can never get back. So if I can share with you in 10 minutes some information that will save you hours, weeks, months, or even years worth of mistakes, then I feel like I'll have done my job. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this. There's only one of you watching right now at the very end, but that's fine. But hope to see you guys again in another live soon. And maybe we can do a scheduled one so more people will be aware and you can ask some questions. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.